Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
I know, it's been a long time.
It has been.
It's been a busy semester, to be fair.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really has been.
Yeah, my busiest semester.
Yeah, but Ethan's been putting out episodes.
I know. And Ethan's been doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to the Almost Adults podcast.
I know.
Yeah. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Sam Touchette.
Hi there.
It's great. I mean, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be helpful. Like, who are you to UNE?
Who am I to UNE? All right. Yeah, I'm Dr. Sam Touchette. So I mostly teach organic chemistry, although a little bit of general chemistry, especially the lab, on the side as well, and medicinal chemistry here at UNE. I'm an associate teaching professor at UNE. By title, I'm also another hat that I wear, the assistant director of the School of Molecular and Physical Sciences. So a couple different hats at UNE.
I've had you for organic chemistry. I mean, I am currently in your organic chemistry, and I had you last semester, and I think he's great. But
Yeah.
Thanks.
I had Professor Touchette for Organic Chemistry 1 my sophomore year, and I loved it right before I went to Morocco. But I would have loved to have you for Organic Chemistry 2 as well.
Delighted to hear it, but Morocco's a great experience.
It was
too,
a great experience. I loved it.
I was in your organic chemistry class, and we do muddiest points, and in those muddiest points, a lot of the time people ask questions about things that have been complicated for them in your lecture videos, but also people ask questions about life advice or other crazy things and give you riddles or whatever else to figure out. So,
Always fun.
yeah, so I thought that it would be a good idea to get you to impart some wisdom on the rest of us.
I can try.
As a grown-up version of an adult, even though, I mean, technically we are, but I don't know if that counts.
It's in that transitional stage, which
Right.
is one of the really cool phases of life right there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, in terms of your education, I guess, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? How'd you end up here?
So I was actually raised very local. So I was born in Portland, Maine. I grew up in Westbrook, actually, so very close by to UNE. So I was a graduate of Westbrook High School, actually. For college, I went down to the Boston area. I was a chemistry major at Tufts University, so that's Medford, Massachusetts, right outside Boston. And then grad school was at Dartmouth in New Hampshire. And then made the return back to Maine for my first teaching job in 2019 and been here ever since.
So all in New England.
All in New England. I've traveled outside New England plenty, but I can't imagine living anywhere else. I love it here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in New England my whole life. It has an appeal that I don't think is appreciated to the full capacity.
People always forget the appeal over winter and then re-remember it as the year
Yeah,
goes on.
exactly.
Everybody
yeah.
loves it during the summer.
Yeah, of course. So I just have a question for you. You have your Ph.D., so to get there, obviously, you've did quite a lot of research.
Oh, yes.
How would you explain your research background to someone with very little organic chemistry knowledge?
Yeah, so my research background is in synthetic organic chemistry and a mechanistic organic chemistry. So what that means is I'm like a plumber or an electrician on things that nobody can see. So working on an extremely small scale with extremely small things, trying to build molecules that are going to be useful. And more than that, designing the methods that are going to be used to make these molecules that other people can use to make these molecules that are really cool. So my particular type of molecule that I always liked building were ones with medical applications. I was a pre-med before I was a chemist, after all. And so it's a lot of designing different candidates for medications or different classes of compounds that could be used for medications for further study. But it's most of the day-to-day work is designing the reactions that are going to build these molecules together. It's kind of like playing with the world's smallest Lego set.
Is there any specific medications that you've tried to develop?
Oh, yes. So my undergraduate research was focused on designing what's called the glycoconjugate antigen receptors. So the sugar molecules that surround bacterial cells, specifically for pneumonia. So we looked at the sugar molecules that surround pneumonia bacterial cells And the cool thing with those is that they're actually used for recognition between cells. So it means that the different pneumonia bacterial cells can recognize each other using the sugars that are coding them, but our immune system also uses those same sugars to identify them as, well, foreign invaders into the body and to dispose of them. So it was designing different ways to make these sugar molecules in drugs to train the body to recognize them when they encountered them for real with a real pneumonia cell. I worked on, it's called serotype 6b and serotype 14, two of the different glycoconjugate sugar molecules on the outside of that bacterial cell, how to make those. They're now incorporated in Pneumovax, so one of the pneumonia vaccines that are out there. My graduate research was focused a little bit more on type 1 diabetes, in how to modulate the activity of the SGLT1 and SGLT2 antagonists. The different receptors that are responsible for reuptake of sugar from urine, which is a particular medical concern for patients with diabetes.
Yeah.
So those are two medical fields that I've done research in.
You also talked about how you were a pre-med student and then you switched to organic chemistry. With that, were there any like setbacks or turns that like shaped your career with that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest setback I actually faced was probably in grad school. So after I had already made the switch from pre-med to chemistry in particular, so I had already decided I was going to be a Ph.D. in chemistry at this point. But my background, when I was working on the sugar molecules for pneumonia as an undergrad, my background was particularly in what's called organosulfur chemistry. So how sulfur actually interacts with sugars to build these molecules. And that was the project that I started grad school with, was working on new reactions with sulfur. So I joined a group that did two projects, one on sulfur chemistry, one on indole chemistry. So two different subclasses of organic chemistry, and I was part of the sulfur team. Funding gets tight sometimes in research, and so the sulfur funding didn't last quite as long as I would have liked, and so through no fault of my boss, no fault of mine, the sulfur chemistry had to stop and I had to move over to indole. So it meant right about 1 to 2 years into my graduate career, when I knew I wanted to be a chemist, reshaping how I thought of what sort of chemist I would be, what I would specialize in. So learning everything from the ground up all over again with another subfield of chemistry. But I think some good things came out of that, because there's a temptation as you start getting more and more specialized in a field to kind of get in a rut and kind of just see your career as following one path. So it helped, trial by fire, I suppose, force me into a little bit of flexibility in my career, and to be open to new possibilities. And I learned to love indole chemistry in the end, a couple years later when I got my PhD for it. So to this day, indole remains one of my favorite subsets of organic chemistry.
That's really cool. I mean, I know personally pre-meds often, or pre-professional people in science fields often have that lack of flexibility. I know I am very set on, like, this is my goal, this is the path I need to take, and anything that deviates me of that path causes me a lot of stress and anxiety. I definitely relate to, like, needing to learn the new flexible perspectives on life. But with studying chemistry, has it changed the way that you view the world or think about life, I guess? Like, going through this process in your education, has there been anything that sticks out?
Oh, yes. So the biggest thing that studying chemistry reshaped about how I think about the world is to think mechanistically. Like, there's a temptation when you look at the world to see a whole bunch of random things happening all over the world, in your own life, and of course the broader world as well, to see things happening randomly. But the message of chemistry, and organic chemistry most especially within chemistry, in my opinion, is that there's always a sort of invisible underlying principle. Like, there's something that's making sense out of all of those observations you're observing, and that's the kind of fundamental belief of science and chemistry and organic chemistry, all of them, is that there's a sort of fundamental explanation. There's a mechanism by which the molecules actually behave, and we can learn it. We can study it, and we can develop in our understanding of it, rather than treat it as a sort of random happenstance, that they do it because they do it and there's no better explanation. And it's not always the first thing you would assume it is. You're constantly, scientists in general, and a student in particular that's studying this and learning this for the first time, you're constantly reshaping how you think that those mechanisms work. So you're developing your understanding of it as you go. And that goes back to the earlier topic about building in flexibility and learning to be comfortable with the ambiguity. Because sometimes the ambiguity is realizing that what you thought you understood really well, there's a better way to understand it that explains even more. So I'd say that becoming comfortable with ambiguity, becoming comfortable with thinking analytically, and breaking it down to fundamental mechanisms, is the biggest thing that learning chemistry has reshaped about how I view the world.
Wow. That was very well put, I will say.
Thank you.
Have there been any big decisions that have come based out of uncertainty or changes in your path, I guess, that you
yes.
weren't expecting?
I figure I can highlight a little bit more of the transition from being pre-med to being a chemistry major for that, because that kind of tells a bit of a story of that. So I started college as pre-med. I came from a very medical family. My mother's a nurse. My father's a medical assistant. It was always the kind of going assumption that I would go on to enter the medical field, and happy to do it and was excited to do it at the start of college. And then I discovered when I took organic chemistry, thinking that I would put up with it, it's one of the pre-med required classes, that I fell in love with it. And I discovered some challenges in how I might have viewed the field of medicine had I stuck around with it a little bit longer. There's some unique challenges that are present in the medical field, what with insurance paperwork and things like that. I've got an intense dislike of paperwork in general, as well as anything that I can't explain with a nice scientific mechanism. So paperwork processes and insurance and things like that definitely falls in the category of things that would frustrate me. All that aside, I kind of made the decision in my sophomore year that I was going to join a research lab. I picked sugar chemistry because it sounded interesting and it sounded medically applicable, and it kind of bridged the gap from being pre-med to being chemistry. Dropped the pre-med designation. The way it worked where I was an undergrad was you could pick any major, and pre-med was kind of a designation you added on to that major. But then what to do next? I had no idea, and I wouldn't really figure it out for another few years. I continued working in the research lab because I loved it and hoped something would come of it. I took on TA responsibilities because that's the sort of thing you did. If you were going into the research world, if you were going on to a Ph.D., you were going to have to do some teaching. So I took that on, but for a while I didn't know how I was going to go from the certainty of knowing I was going to be a physician, I was going to have a physician's income, I was going to provide my whole family expected me to be a medical physician, how to respond to all of that uncertainty when I didn't even have a good answer myself to what I was going to do years later. It's comforting to know, looking back, that it worked out. And so it's the best assurance I can give to anyone now who's facing some uncertainty is someday you'll be able to look back and it'll all make sense, and you'll see the path, how it was kind of going step by step along the way. It may not be obvious now. It will someday, and I wish I had a way to prove that to you now. I didn't, because there's nothing I can tell you anyone could have told me sophomore year in college that would have persuaded me. But I could say now that looking back that it's definitely become clearer as I've continued down that path.
Yeah. I think, everything changes with time. I've talked to a lot of people who are older versions of me. They're farther down the path than I am. And a lot of people have expressed, like, 11 years ago, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have known that, I wouldn't have imagined that I would be where I am now. And I think there's something really almost beautiful about life in the way that, like, you really can't predict what's going to happen, what opportunities arise, what doors open.
Exactly. It keeps you surprised.
Yeah.
And that keeps fun and excitement in life. If you can't predict everything from, I don't know, from the age of 18 until the end of your career, what your career is going to look like, I can only imagine it would be a lot less exciting if you could.
It's very true.
That is very true.
Something human about it.
Exactly. So you've done a lot of research and all of that, but what makes your work feel meaningful to you just beyond like the research and like the achievements that you've done with that?
Well, the way I answer that is that the direction I went in after graduate school was towards teaching. And it was specifically the meaning question that got to me, that made me want to be a teacher. Because what I found gave meaning to my work was particularly helping other people understand its beauty and the deeper life lessons that could come out of it in particular. So there's a temptation to cling to accolades or some sort of concrete thing you can show for your career, like an award or some sort of celebration, or in research a publication, or things like that. But in my experience, some of the most meaningful things I've ever gotten from my career have been some of the intangibles, some of the things that are more invisible. The sense that a student could leave one of my classrooms and not just understand organic chemistry better, because it's incidental, and I think I'm not going to get meaning out of merely doing my job description. But if they can leave my classroom with a better grasp of how to deal with uncertainty, how to take a challenge that they thought they could never overcome and sit with it until they do, that they could discover a love for learning, and a passion for exploring new ideas, and that maybe they could come to a sense that the best outcomes in life come not to the most intelligent people necessarily, but to the most tenacious people, the people who are willing to stick with a problem even when it gets difficult. I've met way too many people over the course of my career who are incredibly intelligent, some of the most ridiculously intelligent people I've ever known, and they end up stalling in the end because they get bored, they get downtrodden when things get difficult. And some of the most successful people I've ever known in my life have been the people who, although they may not have started as the most successful, as the ones you would expect to succeed, they're stubborn and they stick with it even when it gets more and more difficult. So seeing that sort of intangible growth in my students, that's what gives meaning.
Yeah. I just, like, even just in your classroom, I think you guys, like, the organic chemistry people have done, like, an amazing job, like, doing that in the classroom.
I
would
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like I learned a lot, definitely.
I learned how to stick with it.
Stick with it, genuinely.
Even though it's very frustrating at times. I was at office hours before this.
Yeah.
Even though it's very, very frustrating with synthesis problems.
Synthesis problems. But it's bigger than just synthesis problems.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I've had a handful of students so far in my career that have gone on to become professional chemists. So they, like, doing synthesis is actually part of their job description. But the vast majority, we're talking in excess of 99% of my students, don't go on to become chemistry or biochemistry PhDs. But the most important thing to learn from all of those is that sort of stick-to-itiveness. It's designed to be one of the most challenging things that you might have faced so far. And so for anyone, no matter how intelligent they come in, when they're first trying to solve this problem, it's always going to be difficult. It's always going to require some effort, and my goal is that any student feels that even the hardest things are achievable with some effort, some tenacity, and that's where the passion really comes out of.
I would say that uncomfortability leads to learning. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, I think, something that I've learned from organic chemistry, at least, and in our conversations outside of that. I think feeling uncomfortable and feeling like you don't get it and you just have to keep trying because you have to pass this this test. You have to do it. But at the end of the day, the behavior becomes habit, and you learn to keep pushing through uncomfortable situations. You learn to keep learning, and I think that's extremely valuable.
Exactly. That's the sort of the intangibles that you develop. It's character growth is one of those. It's developing a habit of tenacity and sticking with it. That's some of the most important things you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. What's something that you wish people understood earlier on in life, and not just in the science field, but in life in general? Like, what is something that you wish that you could impart on us young folk, on us who have no idea what we're doing?
From another person who's still figuring it all out.
Exactly. I think everyone is all
yes.
the time.
Always.
I guess I'll start there, actually, is that the temptation is to think that there's going to be some sort of concrete endpoint to figuring it out. Like, you're going to reach an aha moment where you know how it all works now, and it's never going to work like that. I told the story earlier about my initial plans for research for graduate school being overturned right when I thought I had my career figured out, and then we start again from the beginning. And that happens all lifelong, is continuing to reroute who you're becoming. And I guess that's the bigger picture thing that goes along with this, is remembering that you're always becoming someone. There's a sort of temptation when you're in late teens and 20s to, I want to say, almost prove your particular mark in the world at that age. Like, that you should have figured out who you are, what your career looks like, what your relationships look like, what your life is going to be like at that age. And that's absolutely not true. And that's, I suppose, the biggest thing that I wish I understood younger, and so I wish plenty of other people understood younger too, is that it's more at that phase about becoming the sort of person that you're going to want to be. It's about developing those skill sets. And sometimes that doesn't lead to some satisfying answers in the moment. It doesn't lead to a satisfying, I could sum up who I am in one nice, neat paragraph for someone. It's an open-ended question. And becoming comfortable with that sort of open-endedness as you discover who you are and who you want to be, while you can still reshape your entire life. In college, you can still change your major. You could still change your career path. I know I did, and you can work out perfectly all right if you do. And being comfortable with that sort of ambiguity is a really hard thing to develop. But I wish I had earlier, and so that's the biggest bit of advice that I'd give younger people now, is become very comfortable with ambiguity, become very comfortable with being honest with yourself in ambiguity. Be very comfortable with saying, I get it. We spend far too much time, far too much effort lying to ourselves about how much we understand something, when sometimes the most honest answer and the most helpful thing to say is, I don't get it yet. Because as soon as you put that yet on the end, then you're telling a story of the future. You're saying you can grow from this. And then developing that habit is going to set you up on a trajectory of lifelong growth, even if you don't have 100% of life figured out just yet.
That was really well said.
I know, genuinely.
That was really well said.
I feel like I'm speechless from that.
I know, that was really good. Yeah, a lot of life is unknown. Absolutely. I know you've talked about with one of the muddiest points. You said to not view life in semesters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what's something, I mean, if not that, what's something that you think college-aged people often overlook?
Well, the biggest thing might be that is breaking it up into semesters too much. And I guess I'll reiterate that on the air, since I just told it to my my class that I've got currently in organic chemistry too. So the way college is set up is semester by semester. So you start a semester with one set of classes, and you go through those classes, you learn the lessons you're going to learn, and then the semester ends. And then you've got another semester and repeat until done. And so there's a temptation to sort of break up college into a bunch of semesters. Like, just get through the tasks of this semester, and then you're going to have a new set of tasks next semester. And there's a part of that that's true. There's some realities of scheduling there, that you have to complete the tasks of this semester and then worry about the next semester. But there's something inherently artificial about that, and something that you can set yourself up for life, seeing it as a sort of trajectory of continuous growth. Take the time at the end of the semester. I say this as we're nearing the end of one semester. Take the time to reflect on what went well and what didn't go so well this semester for you, and what you might like to do differently next time. Because a semester is not meant to just be a closed little story that starts in August and stops in December, or starts in January and stops in May. They're supposed to be chapters within a longer story that build one into the other. So it's worth reflecting. It's worth reflecting as you reach the end of one semester, what you want to do differently and what you want to do again, what you want to celebrate, what went great this semester and you want to celebrate. Take the time to celebrate it. What do you, slightly harder to say, but what do you want to mourn from this semester? Like, what didn't go so well? And that's that point of honesty again, is sometimes it's worth being honest with yourself about what went really well and what could have gone better. Because that's the only way that you can set yourself up for the best possible path next semester. And that leads back to that whole tenacity thing, to sticking with it, is that one bad semester doesn't define you. One bad grade doesn't define you. To give one example, I'm an organic chemistry professor now. I'm about to announce one of my most embarrassing grades ever on live. My first organic chemistry exam, my grade was a 55.
Wow.
I'm an organic chemistry
gosh.
professor. So believe me when I say one bad exam, one bad day, even one bad semester doesn't define who you could be. So keep viewing it as a continuous trajectory of growth, and you can get wherever you'd like to be.
I think that's a great segue into my last question, actually.
Oh, sure.
So I know that a lot of people, especially in college, we quantify success by grades and numbers and how far ahead of our peers we are. And things like that can be very damaging and stress-inducing. So I wonder if there's any way that you would now quantify success, being outside of that environment where you're getting number grades and competing against your peers. And would you consider yourself succcessful in that as well?
Okay. A few questions there.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No problem. Where to start with it? Success for me, I think, like many people, used to be very, very quantitative. So every high number cheers you and every low number rattles you. And that's kind of the consequence that happens when success is so quantitative. I've learned to view success very differently now than I used to. Success aligns a little bit more with passion. So are you doing what makes you truly you? Are you most alive when doing it? Is it the sort of thing that you can wake up each morning excited about the possibilities of the day and then go to sleep at night feeling that today had meaning? If you can say yes to those things, then that would be success. And it takes a while to develop, and it takes a while to reorient mindset and viewpoint to something like that. I think it's more holistic. I think it's helped me get through some of the low points, some of the low numbers that have happened in life, because it's focused more on growth, because it's focused more on who I believe that I could be, rather than nitpicking apart every failure that I might have had. And passion is a hard thing, because there's a sort of temptation, and I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they think about passion. I made the mistake of thinking about passion this way myself for a very long time, is thinking that it's the sort of thing that hits you from the outside. As in, you encounter something new and you have this spark of passion that comes from you know not where. It just awakens in you and you can't stop it. If that's how you think of passion, then my concern is that it's going to feel very fleeting. It's going to happen suddenly, and then it's not going to happen. And it's going to be driven by emotions, and you're not going to have that staying power of passion that's going to keep driving you towards meaning, which is going to keep driving you towards a feeling of success, which is going to keep up the motivation to keep going, even when things get difficult. That's the danger with viewing passion that way. So what took me forever to learn, and I hope all listeners could learn a little bit quicker than I did, is passion comes out of sustained effort. It often starts in a really dull place. Organic chemistry I could use as my example, because it's the one that I developed my first passion for, and that was after that really low exam grade. I used to lock myself in a conference room and practice mechanisms over and over and over again. And initially, it just started out of a stubborn belief that I wouldn't let that number define me, and that I could make a successful number out of it. And so it did. I ended up passing organic chemistry even with that low grade. I ended up learning the mechanisms by the end. But the thing that stuck with me longest out of it was actually the passion that arose out of it. When you stick with something long enough that it becomes innate, when you stick with something long enough that it starts to reframe how you view the world, that's when passion starts arising, is because then you start seeing the entire world through that lens. And it took a while to develop, and it took even longer to realize that that's what happened, because passion doesn't hit like a spark. It hits sort of like a slow, steady increase over time, just through sustained effort, often starting in some of the most trivial, mundane places, like just in a conference room doing practice problems for multiple hours at a time. That's not what I would have thought at 20 would have led to passion, but it's definitely, looking back on it, where the passion actually started. So be patient with yourself. Don't hold yourself to the expectation that passion is going to be obvious to you when it first happens. Sometimes it takes looking back to discover where that passion came from. So for your last question, do I feel successful myself? Absolutely. And the great thing about using passion as your barometer of success is it becomes much more stable. Because if I just viewed success by numbers, I have days when my pass rates on my quizzes are incredibly high, and I have days when it's incredibly low. I have days when I'm teaching really well and days when I'm not teaching so well. If I just measured it based on numbers every time I did it, my mood would swing, my motivation would swing, and my ability to sustain growth would be erratic at best. But if it comes down to meaning and it comes down to passion, I can sustain that effort as long as I need.
It's very insightful.
That is.
It's very insightful. As we come to a close, and thank you for being here.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Of course.
What is just, I guess, a one-sentence summary, if you could, or a quick little tip that you say people should bring with them following this conversation?
Ooh, one sentence. Sum it all up in one sentence.
It could be 2 sentences.
Or two. You'll
if
permit me
need
to?
be. If need be.
I'll try.
We talked about a lot. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Never be afraid of the hard work that's going to go into finding your passion.
I like that.
That was heavy. That was good.
That's a good one.
Took me a moment to
Yeah.
come up with, but
Never
best I
be
got for you for
afraid
now.
of the hard work that goes into defining your passion.
Yes.
Wow. I think this conversation's been very insightful for me personally.
I've learned a lot.
I have learned a lot.
Glad to help.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And thanks to our listeners as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And thank you for being here. But yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I hope you go and enjoy your lunch.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. All right.
All right. That's
That's it.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.